She sat quietly in the back of the classroom, pretending to read from an empty notebook. No one knew the secret she was hiding behind her forced smile. While other students flipped through their shiny new textbooks, she stared at her hands. Every day, she feared someone would notice the truth she worked so hard to hide. But what happened next would change her life in a way she never imagined. 12-year-old Amina was known for her glowing eyes and quiet nature. She lived in a small, weathered house with her mother, who worked long hours washing clothes for neighbors just to keep food on the table. Amina never complained, even when she went to bed hungry, even when her shoes had holes, even when the cold wind crawled through the cracks in the walls. School was her only escape, a world where dreams didn't cost money. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise, helped her mother with chores, braided her hair with care, and walked 2 miles to school with worn-out sandals. She carried a bag that used to belong to someone else, its zipper broken and its fabric faded. The new school year had just begun. Students were excited, laughing, unwrapping their fresh sets of textbooks. The classroom smelled of paper and hope. Amina, however, sat silently at her desk, hands folded, heart pounding. She didn't have books, not a single one. When the school announced that each student had to buy their set, her mother's eyes had filled with tears. She had whispered, "I'm sorry, my child. Give me time." But time didn't change anything. The little money her mother earned was already gone before it arrived. Rent, rice, medicine, everything came first. Books were a luxury Amina knew she couldn't ask for again. To hide the truth, she carried an old notebook and pretended to follow along. When the teacher said, "Turn to page 12," she looked down and moved her finger over blank sheets. She memorized what others read aloud so that she wouldn't be questioned. Her teacher, Miss Nadia, was a kind woman in her early 30s, always gentle with her voice and careful with her words. She often noticed the way Amina looked at the board with deep concentration, as if trying to capture every single line before it disappeared. During breaks, other girls compared their colorful book covers and solved problems together. Amina would quietly slip outside, sit on the steps, and pretend to revise. She watched the playground but didn't laugh with them. She feared someone might ask to see her books. One afternoon, while students solved math problems, Miss Nadia walked around the class. She saw bright covers, sharpened pencils, and open pages, until she reached Amina's desk. Amina quickly pulled her notebook closer, tilting it away. She felt her throat tighten, but Miss Nadia didn't say anything. She simply watched Amina copy questions from the board with impressive speed, as though nothing was missing. After school, while everyone rushed home, Amina stayed back to finish copying notes. She wanted to memorize what she didn't have. That night, she studied under a flickering candle, whispering the notes she had copied. She knew that without books, one day she might fall behind, yet she held on to hope even if it was small. Little did she know, someone had already noticed the pain she tried so hard to hide. The weeks passed, and lessons grew harder. Students were now assigned homework directly from the textbooks. Some worked in groups, others read aloud after school. Amina stayed quiet, copying problems from classmates when they weren't looking. One morning, during a reading assignment, students were told to take turns reading passages aloud. When it was Amina's turn, silence filled the room. She held her empty notebook, pretending to flip pages. "I'll pass," she whispered, her voice shaking. A few students exchanged glances. One boy snickered under his breath, and a girl in the front row muttered, "She's always acting weird." Miss Nadia gently stepped in. "It's all right. We'll come back to you later." But Amina's cheeks burned. She stared at her desk, wishing she could disappear. Later that day, during break, some students whispered nearby. A boy said, "Maybe she just doesn't know how to read." Another giggled, or maybe she lost her books in some flood. The laughter stung more than any wound. Amina sat alone on a bench, clutching her notebook as if it were armor. She blinked back tears, praying no one would come closer. At home, things were no better. Her mother's health was worsening from constant work. Some days there was barely food to share. Amina told her everything was fine at school, but every word she spoke felt heavy. One evening, as Amina was finishing her chores, her mother looked at her and said, "I know you're hiding something, my child." Amina tried to smile. "I'm okay, Amma. I just want to study." Her mother held her hand, her voice weak. I wish I could give you everything. The following day, a surprise textbook checking session was announced. Each student was told to place their books on their desk. Amina froze. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it. Students lined up their books proudly, glossy covers, neat labels, bright subjects. Amina kept her hands under the table. When Miss Nadia approached, she paused. The air felt heavy. For a moment, no one spoke. A voice from across the room whispered loudly, "She doesn't have any." Another student added, "I knew it." The room buzzed with whispers. Some looked curious, others judgmental. Amina's eyes filled with tears she couldn't hold anymore. She stood up and ran out of the classroom. She hid behind the school building, breathing hard, wiping her face with her sleeves. Shame, fear, and helplessness wrapped around her like chains. That evening, Amina didn't study. She sat near the small window in silence. She considered giving up, leaving school, and helping her mother full-time. Maybe dreams weren't meant for people like her. She cried herself to sleep, believing the world had no place for her pain. But life was about to surprise her in a way she never could have imagined. The next morning, Amina arrived late to class, walking slowly with her head down. She expected stares and whispers. Instead, she found silence. On her desk, there was a stack of neatly wrapped books tied with a ribbon. Each one had a label with her name printed in careful handwriting. She froze in place, eyes wide. Her classmates watched, confused and curious. Amina looked around, unsure if it was a mistake. Miss Nadia stepped forward with a soft smile. "These are yours, Amina." Amina covered her mouth in shock. Tears welled in her eyes, but how? Miss Nadia gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I noticed you didn't have the books weeks ago. I spoke with the school administration and we found sponsors, not just for you, but for any student in need. You are not alone." Amina's lips trembled. She couldn't speak. The class was silent, not with judgment, but with surprise and respect. From today, Miss Nadia continued, no child in this classroom will be left behind because of money. Amina slowly touched the cover of the first book. It was new, smooth, and full of promise. She opened it and felt as though the world had opened with it. Some students approached her quietly. One girl whispered, "I didn't know." "I'm sorry." A boy added, "You're really strong." For the first time in weeks, Amina smiled without hiding. After school, she hurried home with her bag full of books. Her mother was seated on the floor, sorting laundry. When Amina showed her the books, her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Who did this?" she asked. "My teacher," Amina whispered. "She helped me." Her mother pulled her close, pressing her forehead against hers. "There are still angels in this world." That night, instead of studying by candlelight alone, Amina read aloud to her mother. The words felt magical, as though each letter carried hope. The next day, something unexpected happened. Miss Nadia announced a small reading group after school. She began tutoring students who struggled, quietly helping anyone too shy to ask. Amina became one of the best readers in class and often helped others with their lessons. Slowly, the classroom changed. Students became kinder, more aware, more willing to help. The jokes stopped. The whispers disappeared. A sense of unity began to grow. Months later, Amina topped her exams. But what mattered more wasn't the marks. It was the belief that she belonged, that her dreams had a chance. All because one teacher cared enough to notice. Sometimes, the greatest change begins with quiet compassion. A single act of kindness can restore someone's hope in the world. Not every hero wears a cape. Some hold chalk and notebooks. Kindness doesn't just help one person. It inspires everyone who sees it. Be the reason someone believes in possibilities again.